Our guest in the studio is Nzube Ndiokwelu.
Yes.
Of course, our conversation is on life without internet. So, what would life without internet look like? Just from your own perspective.
I feel like we should, talking about perspective,
Yeah.
let's take you back to the 90,
Did he
70.
Did he exist? In
No,
the
let's
70s?
assume it existed then, that there was no internet. In that period, what would life have been for you?
In 1970, without
I wish there was
internet.
a 15 year, like just as backward as
Well,
possible.
As at 1970, there wasn't really broadband internet available, so
Okay.
life must have been very, very physical, face to face, and much more interactive. People must have had more conversations together, and we also realize that you put more effort into whatever you try to do or in communicating with your other people, because this time around you write letters and then you write different faxes. So you have to compose it and expect a response days after. So you put in an effort to compress information in a way that you're able to, when conveying that information, you're able to, capture whatever you want to say over that period of time. So life was much more slower, and you would expect it to be much more, engaging in a much more human
Engaging.
way. Yeah.
Engaging. At least there is the advantageous part of it and also the disadvantageous part of it. But the one question that comes to mind is, do you think this current generation can survive the 1915s if you were to go back to time?
It all depends on your perspective. I mean, if I just try to respond to your question, the first thing that goes to my mind is when you say, do I feel our generation, the Nigerian generation or the general world
The
generation?
general world.
Because the
General
reason
world.
why I say this is you may realize that you may have stark differences in terms of, let's say, human response or emergent patterns on human behavior when you remove internet. So, for example, when you remove the internet in Africa or in Nigeria, I would say Nigeria specifically, you may expect us to gradually over time become more productive. This is what I may speculate. And then when you remove the internet, let's say in a city like New York, you may expect them to gradually deteriorate because, they're much more integrated into these technologies. So we are not that much integrated into them, and we are more the consumer end of these technologies. So when you take a look at it from that perspective, you may realize that instead of, expecting our society to crumble, we may just simply just realize that we've never really built.
But do you think that the society can truly function fully without the internet? The society that we have now.
Yes, it's already functioning without the internet. We have intermittent power, internet outages, broadband.
It's
rollouts.
just for a period of
But
time. isn't it?
broadband connectivity isn't that spread out all over the entire country. So you still have limited connectivity in densely populated urban areas. So when you still put that into function, you realize that rural areas still don't actually have this much touted, high-speed internet services that you may feel like. Some villages really don't have internet services till now.
Talking about functionality, and connectivity,
Yes.
right now with the use of internet, it has really distracted a lot of face-to-face, one-on-one connectivity. You could see siblings in their homes and they are barely communicating or talking. Everybody with their phones. It doesn't mean they don't love their brother or sister, but then again, they're just glued and used to their phones. Do you think the internet has done more damage in the angle of being sociable with people, connecting with family and friends than good?
Yeah, you could take a look at it from a nuanced perspective. I usually don't always like diving straight into any question because there's nuance to a lot of things. So let's say you are someone that seeks knowledge. The internet could be seen as more like a digital extension, like an extension of your neural system or your operating system. It's your ability to, tap into the global narrative, understand what the world is going on, follow how information flows. There's digital money, there's digital, a lot of things. There's an economy that goes on there. But on the flip side, if you're not someone that's actually really, in tune with these technologies, you may realize that, okay, it literally doesn't, when you take it away from you, it improves your attention span. You may now find the need to, engage with your friends out there, because there are many more people that these technologies or what internet enables, it doesn't necessarily, bring a comparative advantage to them. And some of their friends may be those that have, innate advantages and are much more digital first. So what then happens when you have a diverse crowd where there's those that are digital first and those that the internet doesn't necessarily enable their lives. So you realize that if you take away the internet, those it doesn't enable their lives are going to probably, find it much more, they're probably going to be happier than those that don't need it, to their daily life, remote workers and all that. So they're probably going to be, yes, excited. Their friends are now available to interact and also have one-on-one conversations with them. But like I say, when you apply nuance to it, you still see the subtle complexities between just saying taking away the internet is going to improve, the social interaction or, physical conversations. Yes, I believe it's going to improve our attention span. We have a very short attention window these days, thanks to, an information overload from every source. So social media, you have the adverts, you have, there's information coming to every user from every angle, and it's like an information overload to me. So if you take away the internet, it's still going to bring about an improvement in, quality of life to an extent, but you're probably going to throw us into what may be known as the dark ages. Yes, because the world would actually become dark. They would have no compass.
From your own angle, because there are still some countries that really don't know much of the internet, and they're still living their lives and they're okay. But then we'll still come to that. Still talking about connectivity, let's talk about distance relationship, or shall I say, family members that are away, outside the country, they're not together. How can, the scarcity, how can no use of internet help in such a situation? Because I know this generation we are right now, you have a partner or a spouse, whoever the person is, outside your area. The longer the distance, the longer the time of keeping in touch, you may end up, just like you said, the span of attention may just reduce and it may destroy relationships and what have you. Can relationships, so let's say marriages, live long, distance-wise, in the age of no internet?
This will be something that may be subject to statistics to be properly analyzed. What was, relationship or marriage or divorce rates pre-internet era and post-internet era? Because when you take a look at distance relationships, you wouldn't necessarily say that before the internet that relationships fared better, when there was a distance. Perhaps there was probably no bridge in the communication, because what the internet does is it reduces the latency, like the communication time, my ability to pass information or data. It's something that it has reduced to milli and microseconds. So you can literally communicate to someone that's geographically miles away from you. So in an instant. So even if you take it away, you still can communicate with your partner, but it will probably just take a longer period of time. So you see, like I said, you may realize that we've been going faster. And we've been going so much so faster that when you take away the internet, you probably realize that it's probably like taking a heartbreak. Like it's going to literally jolt every single thing. The fabric of our society is literally tied together by this digital system. So when we take away this network of computers, which literally connect and allow us communicate, entertain ourselves, and even, transact better. Money is now on chain. You now have things in the blockchain, and it's been an incredible upscaling, and we've been literally climbing a ladder. When we take away a key backbone, it's just like Lego blocks. If you take it away, everything
falls.
Yes.
You just talked about business, money, and the rest. What skill do you think would actually thrive if there's no internet? where we can't do things online again. Some businesses rely on the internet. What skill do you think is going to be really popular that people will have to use to survive if there's no internet?
Blue collar workers. I believe they are the type of workers that are really going to thrive. You need your plumbers, you need your handymen, you need your masons, you need your artisans, you need your sculptors. You know, those that are going to inspire the society to think for the new age. You need those that are going to help build the society. You also need your philosophers, your deep thinkers. So at the end of the day, you realize that you're just still going to literally have the same form of society that you currently also still have. Personally, I believe there's not much that's going to change in our own society. It may, on the reverse side, actually lead to a boost in productivity. This is what I believe, because a far too few take a, make a collective decision which affects a whole lot of us. And the reason why we mostly don't actually pay attention is our attentions are well drawn out. People are well, ingrained in their remote work. People are well ingrained in their content creation. They have their targets, they have their KPIs, they have their objectives. Everybody's just trying to meet the next target. When you just literally reset everything, you're going to look around and realize that the land beside you isn't being cultivated. You're probably going to go to farm because you need a means to feed yourself.
So what of rise in criminal activities?
I do not believe that the internet has helped reduce criminal activities.
There are people that have jobs online.
Content creators that are busy with that.
Yeah, but you wouldn't
people
necessarily...
that work remotely.
You wouldn't assert that white-collar workers are going to take to crime the minute that they lose their jobs. This is something you have to also consider. You're not necessarily going to take to crime.
So what happens, what happens to broadcasters?
Huh?
What happens to broadcasters?
Broadcasters are still going to be broadcasting information because, information has always been broadcast from time millennia. So you are basically still doing something that has just been done from time millennia, just using different medium. So right now we're using digital means to broadcast information, and people can get it real time right now.
Yeah.
You're probably just going to record it, store it in analog form, and then mail it to another place, and then you still can actually have transmission without the internet.
Yeah, Queensley mentioned something very important. You talked about the skills that can actually sail through periods of darkness, in quote, the dark age. Yeah. Now, as a Nigerian, okay, what skill do you think would do well amongst the youths? Should there be no internet? Because this is the reality we have to face. We are so used to the internet, that some people without their phone with them, they are not themselves for that day. So if the internet is not there, what skill? Because the youths, not many youths really go into skills acquisition and what have you. What do you think youth can thrive with without the internet?
We can just simply look to the past for inspiration. Like I said, we just simply do what our forefathers did.
Hunting.
What did they do?
Hunting.
Every society was properly designed and was properly thought out. It's mostly because we haven't necessarily studied the past properly in detail, which is why we've not really realized we had this thought planned out. We had those that were in charge of legislating administrative activities. We had those that were, mostly known as farmers. We had Obages, and we had Ezobas. And we mostly those that were the hunters. We had those that were mostly blacksmiths, Ndiozu and Ndioka. We had even Ndenka, like the artists. We had every single facet of what currently even exists in the modern civilization right now. The point being, every society has different, components it needs to thrive and to grow. So when we don't have an internet, first things first, we must make sure that we have books. We have quality and up-to-date books. The reason is you have to have a means of being able to record and store information. That's the reason why we have libraries. Libraries are to be taken very seriously because it helps preserve knowledge and information. And in times like this, where you do not have access to information which could be on the cloud or across borders. You literally can just simply go to a library and also acquire that same information. But taking a look to the future, we're soon going to be having local offline AI intelligence in our devices. So soon you're probably going to have end-to-end fully local and running on your device. Requires no internet. The intelligence is already embedded into the hardware. So without the internet, you already have a digital intelligence in your pocket. Now this is probably a stopgap or a measure being developed to actually counteract a period where you are actually going to have a world like this. Even in the blockchain space, we're seeing fantastic innovations. In the Ethereum Global 2025 hackathon, there was a project that really won an award, like it won the hackathon, and it came to prominence because it pioneered SMS to SMS, peer-to-peer, Bitcoin transfers and stable coins without using the internet. No internet, self-fi.
Won't this particular development have limit its access to information due to the lack of internet?
Not exactly. It can literally still resolve using other networks because it's just still having to update on the ledger. Okay. So as long as you are using this entire system, it's still updating the ledger, even while it's still off-chain, and it can still process and transact and store on-chain whenever it gets internet.
Okay.
But at the same time, it still does the job of actually, processing your transactions offline. I mean, there's so many other things. Think about the former CEO of X, Twitter, currently now known as X. He just released the new offline communications protocol known as BitChat, which communicates peer-to-peer using Bluetooth. So basically, you download it and then you can connect to anybody that's around you within distance who has a Bluetooth, and the person can also connect to another person, and you form a mesh. So mostly, you can see that there's a new paradigm emerging, even amongst the top leading innovations on the frontier around preparing us for a life without internet.
So the Bluetooth you're talking about, you don't need an internet. Once you're connected to Bluetooth, you can start communicating.
Absolutely.
Yes, BitChat.
Okay, let's look at relationships. Lily had mentioned that initially. I want to understand that we all have online friends. There are people that you've never met, but you've probably transacted some businesses with them, or even build a very good friendship with them. There are people that still have a full-blown relationship online. They haven't met their partner
They
before.
even break up online.
Exactly. So won't you think life without the internet, won't it slow down the kind of relationship we're about to have? The world, you could have friends from any part of the world even without meeting them. Won't this affect relationships?
Like I said, you're probably just going to usher in something that may look like the dark ages. That Emeka that lives down your street, you probably start seeing his face better. Because at the end of the day, the reason why we literally always feel like there's not enough people, I mean, the data says that women outnumber the men. Why are there men that are still not married? There are a lot of women that could say that they're not married.
Maybe because there are a lot of men in prison.
In prison?
A lot of men that are not ready.
Population of men in prison do not actually tilt anything with respect to this. So at the end of the day, if you take a look at this, you realize that people are going to have much more meaningful interactions, and reality is going to come down a little bit more. Okay. The internet gives people options, and without those options, like I said, we are probably going to realize that polygamy makes sense at some point. And it made sense because people were facing a reality that was much more different. And like I said, it takes away the options. So you literally just face the reality that women outnumber men, and the maths doesn't make sense.
Polygamy makes sense. Let's come into that right now, because I was also of the opinion that if the internet is not there, there will be a whole lot of cheatings in relationships, because your guy is not there or your babe is not there, and you don't know when you hear from your babe, and your babe is not around. Most people will do anything and go away with it, because there's the part of you calling on video call. Let me see where you are. Show me where you are. Show me the room. Who are you with? All of those. You will not see that.
Is going to literally converge on everybody. You're going to value who you see much more closely.
Are you saying we are now going to value polygamy? Because you just mentioned polygamy.
No, the reason is it's more like you're permutating and you're trying different combinations. In mathematics, there's permutations, there's combinations. So when you change parameters, you have a new permutation.
So are you now in support of polygamy?
I'm saying that if you take away internet, you're going to realize
is that the
people
case?
are going to see that women truly outnumber men.
So
And when you look at that,
what
you're
you're now
already-
saying, so what you're now saying is that should there be no internet, there's a possibility that most women
we'll revert
that have
to the
been saying
past.
that
No, I'm saying
I cannot.
we'll revert to the past.
I think you're speaking
Oh.
for yourself at this point.
Oh no,
The
Quincy.
fact states for itself. I simply say that if you take away the internet,
We'll
you
go
revert
back to the dark age.
past.
So that means
Do you get
women
which is
can
why-
settle for being the third, fourth, fifth, sixth wife.
Because
it
you
was
don't have
actually
access.
a product of their reality. It's not a question of choice. The choice that you currently have comes is because of the new systems that exist around us. It's why I always advocate that we pay attention to how these new systems affect how our societies evolve and shape out.
So let's look at it from the angle of education, right? We've talked about relationship, we've talked about business. Let's look at education. You know how helpful the internet has been so far with education. Was it yesterday when we were talking about how would the life had been if we had, if we were back then in the 1990s where there was no chat GPT for quickies, and stuff like that. How would life have been to help you put things, navigate, life
Even
together?
take online courses.
Take online courses and what have you. Do you think without the internet, education would have thrived? We know very well that still back then,
We had a
the
system.
primary school students back then are like the university students now.
Of course.
We know that for a fact. But do you still think it would have done well? Looking at the advancements, the technologies we're having now.
I believe from your description, you just basically almost characterize the internet as something that democratizes information and knowledge. It helps accelerate and onboard everybody to that knowledge base. It's no longer a situation where if you are not literally converged or densely populated in an area where you have the best libraries and that's where you're going to have the best minds around there. The internet, it decentralizes information. It decentralizes your ability to acquire knowledge. Anybody could simply go to YouTube and get access to the leading and top quality knowledge from the
And
best
become an
schools.
expert.
Yes, from Harvard,
As if
from
they had a
Stanford,
formal-
and you are going to see the best lectures from there. So the internet literally enables and it democratizes this information. So it has been helping us scale and upscale the knowledge base of our entire society. Where the schools have had shortcomings, the internet has actually
Cover
bridged
up
those gaps.
gaps, yeah.
And right now, I believe, like I said, as we move into this paradigm, when the fourth industrial revolution, and even if we had something like this, technological mishap, you're probably going to realize that the pace or acceleration of technology right now is moving so fast that we're going to build systems that are going to make this kind of fail-safe redundant. They're going to make it redundant. So the same way we're now having those digital intelligence running locally on devices to mitigate even if you are offline and you still have the intelligence trained and running on your device as long as you have the model with installed on the phone or the hardware. So that's the same way I feel that over time, with respect to education, even if we had something like that, this new communication protocols which are going to rely on systems or networks which are not the internet would probably ensure that it mitigates the risks that are going to exist when you do not longer have an internet. Because like I said, at the frontier there's already innovation going on around offline payments, offline communications. So you can literally see that somebody and a group of elite people and top people in the industry and technology are already, making permutations around a life without this. And there's no bigger signal to this important discussion than the former head of Twitter, who built a platform known for communicating and, communicating all over the internet, now pioneering a new platform which does not communicate over the
But
internet.
I'm curious to ask, talking about these innovations, creativity that you don't need an internet to have access to. Didn't they use internet to find out about those things?
To build it.
Yeah.
They have-
At some point, I believe they needed internet to realize that they may not need an internet to access these things. So, if you find yourself in a place where there's no internet, can you even come about things like that?
the internet is a network of networks.
Okay.
It's more or less like multiple computers connected together to allow seamless communication between each other using different protocols. Now, when you have what enables a lot of what you say is the digital computer. Having a digital device, a digital computer, is different from saying not having an internet. You can have a computer, you can have a tablet, you can have any hardware device that you've always already had, but the difference is they're just not running on the internet. They're not connected together. So you are blind to each other. You have your ability to process your documents, you have your ability to read your PDFs, which you already currently have, and you still transact and share this information using Bluetooth and other. Or that we used to even use there was this was
X.
it red there was Sagem my X1 were using something. It was a different communication protocol that was being used.
So this particular app that needs the Bluetooth to be connected. So once you're out of this area, you can't communicate on that platform. Is
Well,
that what it means?
It depends on the connectivity. Like if you are in a mesh, which is already connected to each other, I'm not really so sure about how it really works, whether it's limited to a specific geographical location or it connects, it links everybody up in such a way that you link to me, I link to another person, and the person links to a third party. So it's either it works in that manner or it's limited to people within that geographical location. So that means it's basically meant to foster communication within local communities.
So how would you say the internet has enhanced, or would you agree that the internet has enhanced human intelligence, or has it just made us really, really lazy and dependent?
Well, the internet democratized information, like I said earlier. It may not have actually amplified human intelligence
Okay.
with the way you would say that artificial intelligence has the ability to amplify human intelligence because it has like a corpus of data which you can consult and you can speak to intelligence which is different from just referring to information. So you can refer to information and you can refer to intelligence. So if you're trying to amplify human intelligence, you may look towards the artificial intelligence models being capable of amplifying human intelligence. But the internet, what it does, like I say, it allows information to be shared seamlessly and very quickly between two different members of a network.
Yeah, still talking about the internet and then innovations and creativity. I'm looking forward to where we have our phones innovations, creativity, whereby you don't need to charge your phone. If Queensley's phone is full, I can just place my phone around hers and somehow the battery life will be transferred to mine. I'm looking forward to that.
But why would you want such a thing?
Yeah, because there are places you will find yourself that there may not be a power supply or your power bank to charge, but someone else's phone is full
Humans.
and yours needs to
One,
get.
one constant feature of human beings are resource conflicts over resources. So the minute I realize that I can
I won't charge my phone, obviously.
Just place it beside
charge
it.
my own device and I'll
Charge.
just simply
So
press
which
device.
means you're sapping energy from me. So
Thank
what am
you
I
very
supposed
much.
to live with?
Yeah, you have like 50%, I have 50%, I will go on. But that's on the lighter side.
Yeah.
Now, the question I want to ask is, let's get to the health sector, the health angle of it now. There are different surgeries that have been carried out that you need advanced technologies to work with. And these technologies, most of them work with the internet as well. You know, we know of the normal basic, not basic though, but I'm using basic because it's very common. Our grandparents could stay in their home and do not like to use knife or needle to tear someone and bring out the child. I want to believe that there are other ones that you still need some sort of advanced machines to work with. What now will not happen to human life that has the money but don't have the means, the technological means to manage it?
Well, if you still take a look at survival or should I say mortality rates in the health sector within the 70s and the 80s and take a look at the mortality rates in the 2000s and currently right now, would we say we have better rates?
In Nigeria,
I believe we've had deteriorating state of facilities, infrastructure, services all around. The health sector services have been declining. We no longer track mortality rates along accident and emergency centers. We no longer check diagnostic success and treatment success failure out of outpatient statistics. We no longer basically track and are proud of people, being treated and modern medicine being something that it's useful to the everyday person. I mean, it's a game of the rich. And when you take a look at it like from that manner, you realize that in the past, it necessarily wasn't a game of the rich. People were treated fairly. You had the government hospitals functioning properly. We had the experts and we had the elites and we had our foreign trained professionals coming back to contributing their services. Right now, we have more of our locally even trained professionals now leaving our shores to seek better pastures. Now, it doesn't necessarily speak to me that taking away the internet is going to, in many ways, dramatically, deteriorate the state of our healthcare. The reason I say this is we have some basic things we really need to sit up with. And in sectors like this, you may realize that if there's no internet and there's just local intelligence, which is either an artificial intelligence which is now fully local on device, or they are relying on the textbooks, or then you now have those doctors having to refresh their memory constantly by using those texts and actually really being able to say, I need to source for the latest regulations and books. Right now, everybody literally knows that it's at the tip of their hand, but do they actually put in the efforts? There's something about doing offline tasks that's much more mentally engaging. It's much more, immersive for the person. So whether you are learning, whether you are, practicing, you're going to realize that someone that hones their skill away from the, outside of the digital system may perform better than someone that's, honed within that digital system for precision tasks like, doctors, medicine. So this is just what my intuition tells me around it.
Okay, sorry, Christine. You earlier mentioned about the mortality rates. You mentioned then and now. From that, are you saying that there's a high possibility that the death rate in hospitals now is high compared to then? Because why I'm saying this is back then we barely have, healthcare centers in places, and then of course there are herbs and the rest of it that human beings are working with. But right now we have hospitals scattered almost all over the place, and somehow the rate of attendance, the rate of access to these healthcare centers, it's helpful. It's there for people to go and get medication. So are you saying the death rate then is less compared to the death rate now in hospitals?
People were treated much more humanely in the past.
We're not talking about humanely now.
I'm trying to explain what's going to visiting, like a visit to the hospital felt like. People knew their doctors, they knew their specialists, they were treated to be healed, they were treated to be cured. They were actually advised they were advised on preventive medicine. The medicine we practice currently, it's much more tailored towards prescribing drugs, treating symptoms, than preventing the underlying, what would literally trigger your body due to inflammation or different factors to, respond to sickness. Right now, the state of medicine which we practice, this is what I constantly this is what I believe. The medicine we practice right now treats the symptoms. It doesn't necessarily gear towards that. And as long as we are, practicing a system of medicine which is trying to, sell more drugs and cater to the big pharmaceutical companies, I do not believe that you are going to outperform a system which was much more geared towards preventive medicine.
But if I'm to come in, and if you don't mind, don't you think sensitization is a challenge, and also don't you think ignorance also is a challenge? Because I want to believe that there are other drugs out there that many people are not aware of the likes of HIV. We have PrEPs. People now take PrEPs, prevent you from having HIV. And then people even have drugs they take now that if you're HIV scared, you can also take, to stop. And then they still have the drugs they take when you already finally have the HIV, in quotes. This is for that I'm aware of. I want to believe that there may be other ones too for other drugs that some people may not be aware of.
Frankly, if you are to ask me, sensitization campaigns in the past were much more effective.
How?
I mean, growing up, I would recall seeing AIDS stickers all over people's cars and people's doors. There were doors where you had say no to sex. It was sponsored by NCAID in the past, Nigerian Center for AIDS and Symptom Prevention. I remember there was an agency like that existed in the past, and it was dedicated towards sensitizing people. Right now, you're probably going to see sensitization campaigns relying on the internet, where you just simply have promoted adverts, which you're literally not reading it. So in the past, there were community outreach events, there were community campaigns, which were much more, like I said, there were much more physical interactions. We knew the people that were your communities knew their physicians, and we knew those that had the passion, and you could literally see people trooping to their houses very early in the morning in the past. Right now, I do not believe you're going to tell me that there's a doctor that exists, especially in everywhere right now, where you have those in their immediate community just walking up to their house every morning to say, "Doctor, I have this problem, what should I do?" You're probably going to be told, "Get to the hospital, we're going to refer a drug to you, you're going to do this test, first of all, buy this card." There are a lot of things that is wrong with the state of health which we practice today, or medicine rather. But like I said, it's a sector that, if you are to ask me, if you take away the internet, they may buckle up.
So let's look at the free flow of information. If we had internet absence, how would the government really control or liberate information that goes out to the public, and also to take the truth out there to the people?
The government has always had monopoly on information dissemination from the past. Even when you took it away, we had the Nigerian Television Authority. They were a digital transmission station, if I'm not mistaken. We still have NTA, Channel 12, as it was known in the past, still situated right just beside us at Independence Layout here. So at the end of the day, the government still had the ability, perhaps those old masts that are really big, we may be fired up to communicate once again. Who knows if the satellites are still there, to actually transmit the information across. So information can be transmitted through different medium.
Okay.
It's not just over the internet that you can transmit information. So there are different means which information can still be transmitted by the government. And like I said, government as an organized body has always had monopoly on dissemination of information.
Okay. But talk about information, credibility could also be a challenge. When you pass information from one person to another, you may get something that when it finally gets to you.
And then we revert back to our means of proofing authority. Perhaps we revert to seals, stamps, and government gazettes. There were measures that were being used in the past to preserve authenticate information.
Yeah.
You literally hear people say it was gazetted. This was a common thing in the past, but it's just an official document released by the government disseminating information around this.
So do you think we could actually go back to the pre-internet era without having to, trigger global economic collapse around the world?
I do not believe on a global scale that it would not trigger it.
On
a localized perspective, we may consider, that it may have different, permutations with respect to how the internet is integrated in Nigeria. But on a global level, it's going to decimate a whole lot. The global money flows, logistics, supply chains, a whole lot is going to crumble in seconds. It's going to be terrible.
Talking about crumbling and stuff, let's look at corruption. Without the internet, do you still see corruption thriving? Because without the internet, I want to believe
the courts going up in flames again.
At least there won't be any snakes swallowing money or something.
Thank you. We might start seeing funny news like that, because you see, the internet actually helps ensure that you can have a digital timestamp and have different means of storing in the cloud and having a backup. But when you don't have things like that, you start having weird stories happening in the society. You start hearing that a monkey went into somewhere and carted away documents, and the documents were turned into paper mash. Things like
Because there are no videos, there's nothing to actually prove that is not true.
Go to court. That's what you're going to hear. Go and verify. Things like that. So to avoid,
You said go and verify.
Nigeria is a country where you have to proactively understand that if you do not pay attention to what the implications of what could arise from things like this, when they happen, people are going to literally follow what's going to happen like a movie. It's the reason why we hear ludicrous stories like that. And we'll be like, wow. And people are expecting to hear the next ludicrous story. Because nobody anticipated that there was going to be a future where you could tell somebody that a monkey or a snake carted away millions of money. And the general public will be like, okay, next.
Okay.
Chicken, they were like, next. It's still a death of the attention span in the society.
Okay. Let's look at how this would affect mental health. We know that we have cases of cyberbullying and the rest of it, but also we get therapy and support on the internet. How would this really affect the mental state of some people?
I believe it's going to improve.
How will it improve it?
There's a whole lot of, algorithms and systems which are optimized using the internet to ensure that, user retention, user acquisition, ensure that you have more screen time. And having those extra screen time means that you're much more exposed to the blue screen. Being exposed to a blue screen is most likely going to have adverse mental health effects. And people are much more addicted to these social apps, and they are being engineered to be overly addictive. So when you take a look at it from a mental perspective, it's going to give people the ability to, disconnect from the screen.
But at the same time, being on the internet is like an antidepressant that people take every day.
That is what people assume. Exercise more. Look around. Enjoy the world. There's so much more to life than just being on the internet. It's really engineered to do that to you. That's just the gospel truth. It's engineered to make you feel like that. Exercise more, do everyday tasks, return to life, and you realize that your quality of life is going to improve. It's going to improve.
So, logistics, carrying products from one place to the other, and then do you think people now do online purchase, online stuff? She mentioned that earlier on. How do you see the internet? How do you see Nigerians surviving without the use of the internet to do business, to link up, and the rest of it? Do you see it like Nigerians will, come out in their numbers and be effective in the farm? I'm not talking about, because you mentioned this earlier on, and you were giving the idea of, yes, dark age, we understand. But let's assume we are in urban areas and there are no internet. What would happen to some Nigerians? How would they go about making this money when the likes of hunting is not available, the likes of farming is not available, palm one still there, all those things are not available? What then can we do in an urban
society?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, every society organizes around different concepts. So, for example, let's say currently our North Star, it's more like we're going to Proxima Centauri, which is the solar, the celestial body that looks a lot like Earth and shares the same similar properties with Earth. And that if we're to get there, we must go faster. And that our current, propulsion systems can't get us to that far in the orbit. And this is like a North Star which charts human advancement, human civilization currently. You have Elon Musk advancing space travel. You have the blockchain, innovating on, securing systems and being able to be the backbone. It's trying to literally replace the internet. I mean, everything is now being secured by cryptography. So at the end of the day, you still have robotics, which is coming on, which is meant to be autonomous systems. And these also autonomous systems are all geared towards, working in areas which may be, inaccessible to human beings. So we're trying to explore the stars, we're trying to explore the cosmos. And this is like the general, global, connected, goal. The internet allows us all tap into that goal, and just like the same way we call it emerging technologies, it's just basically us focusing on what is the global agenda, what is the entire world trying to achieve, how are we trying to advance human civilization. And like Elon Musk says, we have the different Kardashev scales, and human being needs to at least get to type 1 Kardashev scale, which is being able to harness at least 1% of the energy which is radiated by the sun. So when you take away something like the internet, you're going to realize that we're going to still organize the society in a way that asks ourselves, what is the most pertinent need of our society? And this, to me, may be where we fail to understand the past. To us, the past, or our forefathers, didn't really innovate, they didn't really explore. But to me, I feel like I say, what was the shared goal of the society? Perhaps the goal of the society was efficiency. And if it was efficiency, the goal could have simply been to ensure that people lived better, people reproduced better, or that they had more children, though modern medicine truly improved mortality rates. And like I say, societies organize around what is their collective vision. There must be a collective goal. The collective goal of every society determines their future. So if we say that where we are heading to is a future which is not going to have that internet, the first thing we're going to do is to ensure we have good libraries. We're going to ensure that we actually redesign our health systems, our judiciary, our policing, our security architecture, our ability to secure ourselves, the role of taxation in the economy. We must revisit every single angle and then plan it top down. Even the society we exist in right now, several studies were done in research institutions to assess the impact of the introduction of the digital internet into the society before it was even rolled out. There are still studies that should be commissioned to ensure that we take a critical look into what would life be without the internet. And those kind of studies could now serve as templates to, these are the type of societies we can model. We can model a society that perhaps simply seeks to harness the energy of the sun and utilizes the energy of the sun to improve general welfare of the society. And then we form markets. We form education. Like, we design our educational curriculum around that vision. We create the markets around that. So in such a way that if you are moving from raw material to a product, we are literally utilizing resources that are local and native to us, which we can easily source, because it's what our ancestors did. The ones they weren't able to natively source, they traded it. And that's actually how you encourage trade. And the ones you have local comparative advantage, you develop from first principles. So you start from the raw material, you transform it into a metal or an alloy, and then from there you process it into something else. Besides, think about it. Digital intelligence is just intelligence that was found in sand. And when you frame it like that, you realize that more than 1% of the world's population really don't even care that somehow mankind was able to find intelligence or create intelligence out of sand.
Back to dust. One question. Okay.
Exactly.
But if you were to choose between lockdown and no internet, which would you work with? We know the experience of lockdown.
I'm a digital first person. So I'll go with lockdown.
Lockdown.
Yes, lock me down, give me access to the internet, I can drive.
So at the end of the day, you still want the internet?
Yes.
And then
I can argue for a life where we can, paint a picture of a life without internet.
The internet.
Doesn't necessarily mean that I would thrive in it.
So if
you're saying you won't thrive in it?
I wouldn't thrive in it. I already thrive in it.
But you're encouraging it.
Yes, which is why I'm promoting the adoption of emerging technologies in Nigeria.
So back to what you said about polygamy. If you were to go back in the 1980s, will you be polygamous? Will you marry like 5, 6, 10 wives? Because of course that's the time. And
Personally, I'll marry one because monogamy, brings a stability to the society. Polygamy really, distorts the society in different ways, which could be discussed in different, in a different light. But like I said, parameters change, and when you tweak different parameters, you have a certain system. And even if I want monogamy, you realize that there are a lot of women that are naturally just going to look around and say, "What am I doing? I do not have the ability to, move between cities." And communicate or link with people from different areas. I'm literally not going to be married. And if this man here wants to marry 2 wives, I'd rather be a second wife. And that's the reality. That people are going to want to, try to make do of the society that they have in front of them. And if that's not what in front of them, they will have choices. And when you have choices, it allows people to still, move beyond that thought process of saying that you are limited to only what's around your environment. You can move beyond that, and that's what the internet gives people ability or access to.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Okay. So that's the most we can have on this conversation. Our conversation was on life without internet. And our guest, of course, joined us in the studio to have a conversation on this particular subject matter. Our guest is Nzube Ndiokwalu. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.